These 7 Appalachian cooking tricks were not all banned for the same reason. Some are smart as a hickory handle, others can leave spoiled food on the counter, dangerous fumes in the house, or a jar on the pantry shelf that can paralyze a person. And the old habit with the hardest safety line can look just fine. Lid sealed down tight. A wild mushroom can carry poison that cooking will not fix, and poorly cooled stock or mishandled organ meat can spoil before supper ever reaches the table. The old ways were not ignorance. They were methods matched to cold weather, smoke, quick processing, and short distances from garden to kitchen. I have lived in these mountains all my life, taught by my mama, pop, and grandmama. We will sort lard, ferments, broth, fire, milk, wild food, and the canning rule that decides what belongs on a pantry shelf. A mountain kitchen was not a museum exhibit. It was a working answer to what came in from the garden, the smokehouse, and the woods before it spoiled. Drying, smoking, salting, fermenting, root cellaring, canning. Folks use more than one way because beans, apples, cabbage, meat, and a late tomato crop do not ask for the same treatment. And those methods depended on conditions we do not always have now. Cold winters, food handled right after harvest, smoke, and short trips from field to kitchen. So when somebody says they banned the old ways, slow down. Ask 3 things. Was it truly illegal, or was it discouraged? What made it work where it started? And what control replaces that old condition in your kitchen today? Some rules came after real illness risks were understood. Some old practices lost ground because factory food was easier to sell and nutrition advice changed. Wood fire cooking is not banned in general, though an indoor setup can run into fire codes and dangerous air. Making spirits at home is different. In the United States, distilling without the proper federal permit is illegal. That is a hard line, and we will leave it there. If you buy your food at the store and do no preserving, this may mostly be history for you. Fair enough. But it still explains why these foods taste the way they do, and why a method that worked in a cold mountain winter can spoil food in a warm kitchen. Judge the method by the food and the conditions, not by how old it sounds. That brings us to lard, where the ban story is mostly wrong, though the storage part still matters. Lard was not broadly banned as a food in this country. It fell out of favor under nutrition advice that leaned toward vegetable oils and margarine. That is different from being outlawed, and it is different again from the trouble with many industrial shortenings where partially hydrogenated oils brought trans fat along with them, and the FDA acted to phase that out. Do not throw plain rendered lard in the same bucket with every factory shortening, and do not turn around and claim every seed oil is the same as a partially hydrogenated shortening. That is one tall tale traded for another. Lard has a high proportion of monounsaturated fat, and it is useful. Fry with it, bake with it, use it where you like what it does in the pan or the crust. A skillet has better sense than a slogan. But hear the warning before you trust that jar of fat. Heat, oxygen, and contamination can drive oxidation and hydrolysis, and the fat goes rancid. Rancid fat is mostly a quality problem, but it also tells you the storage has been poor enough to raise contamination concerns. So protect lard and tallow from heat, oxygen, and contamination. They are not shelf-stable forever just because they came from a hog or a steer. If the fat has clearly gone rancid, discard it. Do not call neglect old-fashioned flavor. And fat is the easy case. Fermentation depends even more on keeping the right conditions in place because the wrong thing can take over that crock. A crock is not magic. Kraut, pickles, and other fermented vegetables keep because lactic acid bacteria take hold and lower the acidity. Salt and keeping the food under brine help them do that work while discouraging spoilage. But vegetables left in a jar do not become safe just because somebody calls them fermented. If the salt is too low, the vessel is not clean enough, the kitchen is too warm, or cabbage and carrots are sticking up above the brine, the right pathway may never take over. And see that surface mold or that pale calm yeast? That often means oxygen got in and the brine was weak. It is more than an ugly top layer. It means the ferment may be spoiling instead of becoming the sour, stable food you meant to put up. Do not scrape confidence across the top of a questionable crock. Before you start, read the salt instruction in a tested recipe and make sure your vegetables will stay beneath the brine. Salt, cleanliness, and submersion give the right workers the keys to the kitchen. Leave those keys lying around and the wrong crowd can move in. If that sounds too risky for your household, that is a fair judgment. Use a fully validated preservation method. A doubtful ferment is no bargain, and fresh animal food brings a faster problem still. Once organ meat and bones are on the counter, spoilage can get there before any crock ever would. Offal and bones are not foolish food. They are food that asks you to handle it fast. Whole animal cooking came from thrift and necessity, and there is good sense in using the liver, the scraps, the bones, and the rest instead of wasting them. But organ meat spoils quickly. It holds plenty of moisture and nutrients, which gives bacteria room to grow fast if the temperature slips, and toxins can form right along with that growth. So refrigerate organ meats promptly, keep them away from food that will not be cooked again, and cook them to safe internal temperatures, the same as any other meat. Bone broth is much the same. A long simmer pulls flavor, gelatin, and nourishment from bones, connective tissue, and scraps. Fine eating, but that pot is still perishable stock. If it cools too slowly or sits in the temperature danger zone, it can turn unsafe after the fire is out. Cool it promptly. Do not leave it sitting there because it simmered all afternoon. I have no use for wasting good food, and even less use for calling spoiled food toughness. Bone broth belongs in the supper pot for flavor and nourishment, not on a medicine shelf with promises nobody proved. And once the food is handled right, there is still the fire itself to reckon with. A wood hearth can cook a fine meal, while the room around it can become the danger. A wood fire is not banned. It is a tool, and it has limits. Incomplete burning can make carbon monoxide, and indoors that is an invisible asphyxiation hazard, not just smoke stinging your eyes. Before you light an indoor hearth, the ventilation, fire setup, fuel, cookware, and local code all have to be right. If they are not, do not use it. And flame does not cook evenly because it looks pretty. Fuel quality, airflow, and where the coals lie can leave one side of a skillet too cool for the food while the other side chars black. Judge doneness by sound cooking practice, not by the romance of a flame. A properly managed outdoor fire, or a properly vented one, can put honest hearth flavor on a meal. A poorly vented indoor fire can foul the room with soot and carbon monoxide. If you rent and cannot install a wood stove, root cellar, or dedicated pantry, that is a real limit. Use the modern version of the method you can manage. A stove and a sound refrigerator beat a bad imitation of an old kitchen. And for the folks wanting the moonshine angle, federal law requires the proper permit to distill spirits in the United States, even for personal use. Home distilling also brings flammable vapor and toxic contamination hazards. That is not a kitchen project, and this is not a how-to. The harder warnings are next because a trusted farm, a familiar patch of woods, or a pretty sealed jar can hide trouble you cannot see. Raw milk can carry germs from animal feces and udder infection or contaminated equipment. Children, pregnant people, older adults, and anybody immunocompromised can have a harder time with the outcome, so use pasteurized milk for those households. Raw milk sales rules change from state to state, but a clean-looking farm, good flavor, and a trusted name do not make raw milk safe. Wild mushrooms can carry heat-stable poison. Cooking, drying, or pickling may not touch toxins that harm the liver, kidneys, or nervous system. If a competent local expert has not named that mushroom to species, do not eat it. Stop there. And greens are no place for guessing either. Pokeweed needs its own preparation. Wrong identification or undercooking can bring vomiting, diarrhea, neurologic trouble, or worse. Now the pantry shelf. Low acid food in a sealed jar has no oxygen, and normal boiling water heat does not reliably destroy Clostridium botulinum spores. They can grow and make toxin that causes paralysis and can be fatal. A sealed lid proves only that it pulled a vacuum. It does not prove the food was safely processed. Meat, beans, and most vegetables need a current tested recipe and pressure canning, unless a validated recipe acidifies them. A big pot is not a substitute. Match the exact food form, jar size, ingredient ratios, time, and altitude instruction. A recipe for diced tomatoes does not automatically fit whole tomatoes or salsa. Tradition is no permission slip to guess. If you wonder which mountain stories are practical knowledge and which ones need a lantern put to them, the next question is not in the pantry. in 7 Creepy Appalachian Mountain Secrets. They don't want you to know. We sort the tales with a real root from the ones that grew taller on every porch. Keep your good jars honest.